Welcome to my Top 100 Board Game Series, 2025 edition. Over the next 10 videos, I'm going to share my favourite games of all time, as my opinion stands right now. This is a very personal list that I've honed over the years. They are not the 100 board games I would recommend to you, just like I wouldn't serve my spaghetti bolognese recipe to an Italian. If there's a game you think I shouldn't have in my top 100, let me know in the comments by typing "I don't understand subjectivity." But as ever, if you want to buy any of them, there are links in the description below. Let's get to the list. At number 100 is Carcassonne, which is an absolute classic modern board game, which still feels so fresh and original despite it being over 20 years old, because nothing since has done anything like it. If you ignore all the expansions and spin-offs of Carcassonne itself, there are no games that can come close to it because it does tile laying in a shared area, and it does it really well. On your turn, you take a tile off the stack and add it to the shared map. And then you can choose to add a meeple to that tile to try and score points off of it. Only you can then score it, but you've got to finish it before you get those points. So your meeples can get locked on the board on roads that aren't getting finished, especially cities that get bigger and bigger. But if you can't get the walls of those cities finished, then you're not going to get those meeples back to score other things. I love all the ways you interact with the other players in this game. You'll steal opportunities that they want. You'll add an annoying tile to their city, hoping that they then won't be able to finish that city, so they won't get the points and they won't get their meeple back. And then you got the farmers, which are like the top level strategy of this game, because the farmers are connecting to the cities through the fields that are throughout the map. So you might have a farm that connects to loads of different cities, and someone spots that, then they're trying to mooch in on their territory. You can't add a farmer directly, but you add it and then hope that you'll get the tiles to connect it up later. And I just love watching the board evolve, seeing what people are attempting, but will they get the tiles from the stack that they need? There's a fair amount of luck that comes from that stack, but it brings with it drama and excitement as you wait to see if the player that needs one specific tile to finish their massive city will actually get it before the game ends. And there's a push or luck aspect to it. You can see how many tiles are left. How ambitious do you go before you need to start reining it in and try to actually finish these things? Because ultimately, you could just go for the little points here and there that are achievable. You will get those. Whereas if you go for the ambitious things, you fight over the farmers all game, then maybe that ends up being your downfall. Yeah. It might look a bit drab and dated, but I've really come to appreciate Carcassonne's theme. I'd much rather a game like this that is simple, not trying to do anything flashy, than a game that just can't meet the theme that it's pretending to be. Carcassonne's theme just kind of gets out the way when you're playing the game, and it becomes about the decisions and the interactions between the players. You could buy a game for its theme and you'll have forgotten about it after 3 plays. Or you could buy Carcassonne, which was never about its theme, and know that it's endured despite that for the last 20-something years. And number 99 is Rebirth, which is also a tile laying game, albeit a very different one. And this is a very new game. This was in my top 10 games of last year. So I've only been playing it for the last few months, and it's crept up in my estimations even since making that video. This is from my favorite designer, Reinoso. It's reminiscent of other games of his that I love, like Through the Desert and Blue Lagoon. And much like those, you are doing something very simple every turn. You are placing one of your tiles anywhere you like onto the map to try and score points. You will be connecting up these farms, so you will be spreading out. And every time you add an energy farm to an existing one, you'll score points for every tile there. So it really starts to ramp up how many points you're getting each turn. And this is where the interaction becomes really important, because if you let one player go crazy building a massive energy farm in the middle of the board and just expanding out and out, then suddenly every turn they're going to be getting like 12 and then 13 and then 14 points. And so the other players, it's their job to kind of police them a bit, get in their way. And so it's that interesting dilemma of how much do I focus on my own thing, because of course I want to be getting 12, 13, 14 points, and how much do I make sure that I stop other people from thriving, because that's crucial, or otherwise you're never going to win. If you focus too much on your own personal goals or getting what you want, it's not going to be good enough. Someone else will eclipse you. And I can tell you that for certain because it just happened to me the last time I played this game, despite me being the experienced one. And it's that feeling that I love from these games, especially in a 4-player game. You are feeling hemmed in at all times, and you're trying to find the gaps, the ways to get through to sort of outdo your opponents. They are always in your way, and you have to always consider what they're going to want. Are they going to go for this castle over here? Are they going to expand out into that area? In which case, do I need to get there first? Or actually, could I maybe buy a bit of time there and I need to focus over here instead? It's this thing of you've got 5 plates spinning, but you've got to know which one to go and spin next. Because one of them's going to be okay. People aren't really focused over here. But if you don't spin this plate now, you're going to lose it. And someone else is going to smash it to the ground. I love the competition of these castles. So basically, if you place a tile that's next to a castle, you get to place your color castle down. And they're worth 5 points at the end of the game. But it's a little majority competition in the spaces around it. If another player has more of their color down, then it's going to get replaced with their piece. And they're going to get those points instead. So again, it's like, oh, okay, I need to be building out my farm, but I also need to be near castles. And then you also need to be near cathedrals because they're going to give you these private objectives that are going to get you more points as well. So many things to be thinking about, but yet with like such a simple decision of I've got one tile and I can place it anywhere, but that decision is crucial. It isn't my favorite Reinoso tile laying plate spinning game. There are others further up this top 100, but this one's very new to me and I could definitely see it climbing. I think I'm a bit harsh on newer games, but as they start to establish a bit of memory, you look back at them with more fondness. And yeah, maybe this goes further up the top 100. And number 98 is Auf Teufel komm raus, which is a brilliant party game that manages to capture the pure joy of push your luck games and gambling in one package. The core of the game is that you'll take it in turns to push your luck by flipping over these tokens in the center. You'll either get points or you reveal a devil token. If you get a devil, you go bust, you're done. But before all of that, everyone's bet on how well they think the players are going to do that round. What they think the highest total will be from one player. And so you kind of know the makeup of the tokens. There's 100 on a couple of them. You've seen what's already come out. You know how many devils are left in there. So you have to make a bet on how well you think someone's going to do. And then that really informs how much the players push their luck, because you have to meet your bet to get your money back, or otherwise you're going to lose your poker chips. So you keep going to try and hit that total, knowing that you're probably going to go bust. And the player that's bet the highest, they get double back if they meet their bet. So they're really incentivized to keep flipping, but also you're really incentivized to bet high because you want to get double back. So there's just kind of this chaos that ensues because all of the incentives are pushing you towards being a risk taker. What's really interesting is your bet isn't dependent on how well you do, just as long as someone hits that total. So if you bet 250 and then you go bust instantly, you're desperately hoping that someone else on their turn will hit 250 so that you'll win your bet. But there's also other incentives going on, which is that if you flip over the most tokens successfully, you'll get a little bonus. And if you hit the highest total, you'll also get a little bonus. And it's just so fun watching everyone take their turn. Like, you've got everyone's bets are in play. There's reasons for them to keep going and hit their bonuses. There's reasons that you're upset that they've gone bust. Sometimes you're happy that they've gone bust. Also, as the game is going on, some players can be lagging behind on points because there's a fair amount of luck involved. But there's a mechanism where if you're in last place, you will get a payout from every player that goes bust in that round. So it's making a deal with the devil, they describe it. And so you are really hoping that players go bust so that you'll get like 50 points off of each of them. It distills the pure entertainment and brilliance of push your luck, and then adds this extra element of gambling, which just combined just make for such a dramatic, funny game. That I would come back to this game over time and sort of think, should I get rid of it? It's, you know, it's quite a light game in a massive box. But every time I play it, it's just so relentlessly entertaining that there's just no way it can leave my shelf. If Catan is in your top 100 games, you should check out the Catan Masterpiece series, which is currently on Kickstarter, where you can get fancy components to upgrade your game, like these robbers which are made from gemstones or resin. You can get metal buildings and roads, and even new hex tiles made from gemstone, resin, or wood. Your choice. What I like about it is you can mix and match whichever deluxe bits you want. Bling out your dice or get 3D boats for your ports and leave it at that, or you can totally revamp your entire set for the complete upgrade. If you're interested, there's a link to the campaign in the description below. This video has not been sponsored, but if you pledge using my link, a small cut will go to Actualol. So thanks. Let's carry on with the list. At number 97 is Medical Mysteries. I don't have this one anymore because I've played it and completed it. It's very much a one and done game. But this is like an escape room or mystery game that's set in a hospital where you are trying to diagnose patients. So you will have a patient come in and you're getting told like their backstory. You learn about all their vital signs and what symptoms they have on the surface. And then you've got to diagnose them, run tests on them, and then treat them to try and save their life. In many ways, this is a perfect game for me. I love mystery games, crime-solving games, and I really love that medical theme, anything set in a hospital, and I just don't think there are enough good board games like that. And yet, when I went into this, I was so skeptical that it would be fun, and yet they really have made it fun. I don't think it's overwhelming in terms of like the information you learn, and you don't need to know anything up front. Kind of presented like an escape room or mystery where you've got sheets that you start with and there's a few hints that you might spot. And then you've got to pick your actions. You've got a certain amount of time to spend through the night. And so what do you do first? If someone's got like a headache, then there's going to be a bunch of stuff in there that's got headache involved, but then there'll be other like mitigating circumstances that will lead you to one or the other. Or it might just give you a theory early on, but then you've got to actually run the tests to prove that theory out. And so you've got to decide which one to do first. And I just kind of love that threat of like doing the wrong thing or doing it in the wrong order or making the wrong assumption. And the game definitely puts pitfalls in there where you can try to, do surgery and then be like, you can't perform surgery, they're not ready yet. Or you try and give them a medicine that isn't compatible with something else that they've taken or a condition that they have. And then things start to go bad for you. So the patient has like a status. They might come in great distress. They might get worse whilst they're in your care. Or when you treat them and do the right things, then they start to improve. You can also interview the patient and ask them questions that are going to give them background. So if they've caught a disease in a certain place, there might be important things that are relevant. So it feels like an episode of House in a lot of ways because it's not just about the symptoms they're presenting. And I really love the storytelling in the game. It really reveals itself what's happened to these people. You kind of have the story of how you're treating them and how the night goes in terms of how that plays out, which with some of the more difficult patients, can be a real roller coaster. But then you've also got kind of their backstory that might reveal themselves. If they come in unconscious, you of course don't know exactly what's happened to them. But as they start to improve based on your treatment, you kind of get the full picture at the end of it. So it gives you this like nice closure at the end, very much like completing like a crime mystery game. And the level of difficulty is just right for me. Like I feel like I have a good understanding from watching medical shows, which makes me interested and gives me sort of a leg up, but then you still have got to run those tests, or there's still just plenty of things outside of my knowledge, because I'm not a medical professional, that keep it interesting. The reason it's not further up my top 100 list, because I did have a blast every time I played it, is just that it's a very new game, and there's only 4 cases in that first box. The other box isn't even out yet. I certainly haven't played it. So I kind of want to see more of it to establish how much I love it, whether they can keep that consistency up. It's just a case of like, let's play the next one, see if they can keep it up. Can they keep coming up with fresh ideas for it? If so, then I can see this going up my top 100. At number 96 is Anomia, which is one of the simplest games in my top 100, and yet the experience it delivers is big and loud. It's a reaction game, really, where you are flipping over a card, and if you match with another player, you have to immediately shout something, and so do they. And it's a race to say the right thing first. So each of these cards has a little category on it, and then it's also a symbol. And if your symbol matches with another player at the table, when you flip over the card, you've got to immediately shout something out. So I've matched here with Sculptor. My card says Parasite. So I have to shout out a Sculptor, and they have to shout out a Parasite. So I'm thinking Michelangelo, and if I get in there before they say Parasite, then I win the card, I get a point. And that's the game. You keep flipping cards, it's their turn. Now they've matched, and they've got to fight it out. And so you're just going around and waiting for those challenges. And sometimes there can be real lulls, and you're just flipping cards for a while, and the tension really builds. And you're just so ready to say something. But because you're not saying what's in front of you, but what's in front of them, you can't be prepped for all of them. And sometimes it's the card that's just been flipped, and now suddenly you've got to think quickly, and it just really locks your brain up. And that's the entertainment of this game, is that you cannot think of the right thing on the spot, and so you will blurt something stupid out, or you just won't quite get there. It's frustrating but fun. It's that like classic combination. And there are a lot of games like this that kind of play on your reaction times, and I find that a lot of them are they go towards one player as just being really good. Something like Ghost Blitz, there's just one player that just cracks that game so well. I find that Anomia is a bit more of a mixed bag in that, a lot of people can do well, so it's not quite as one-sided. But I also just much prefer this challenge of trying to shout out the word and have that kind of loud experience rather than this kind of grabby thing where you're going to hurt someone. Anomia is so great because it's just like this entertaining talking thing. Everyone's listening, everyone's involved. I've just had some really great times with this game, and I just feel like it never misses. There's a lot of games that I keep in my collection that I see as like my board game ambassador games. So they're not necessarily ones that I love as much as others, but they're perfect for introducing to new people that probably don't even want to play like a board game, but you've got an opportunity. And this is the kind of right level where you can teach the rules in an instant, and they're going to get some immediate positive feedback from the game and immediately understand why it's fun. And Anomia is one of the few that actually kind of makes it into my top 100. That it's just as fun for me still playing this game after many years as it is for the people that I'm introducing it to for the first time. Whereas with a lot of those other board game ambassador games, they're on my shelf because they're more entertaining for them than they are for me. And number 95 is The Rich and the Good, which is a stock market game that looks a lot more dry than it actually is. This was originally called Hab and Gut, and for a long time you couldn't get it in English, but now it's out as The Rich and the Good. And it's a game set in an era where men wore big top hats, and you are trading commodities and influencing the market and trying to make the most money. So you've got this market here that shows the value of different commodities like wheat and salt, and you will manipulate those values by playing cards. And this is the interesting thing about the game, is that you share a hand of cards with the player to your left and your right on these card stands. So they will be facing you and the player next to you, and then this one will be facing me and the player on this side. So I know the cards that they can play, and they know the cards I can play. And you've got an idea then of what you think's going to happen. And so you use that to decide whether to buy this share or sell that share. You will manipulate the market. You will play one of your cards. So I'm going to move green down by 2. But the other card has to come from the other rack, and it has to be halved. So you're weakening the card. So if I played like a plus card, I would halve a card that I haven't got shares in wheat, so I want to halve that. Whereas if I'm playing a negative card that is affecting one of the things I have shares in, well, I want to halve that because it's going to get played either way. There's this interesting collaboration with the player next to you because you share that hand, but which of you is going to play that card? And are you going to play it fully, or are you going to halve it? So you want to play the good cards before your neighbor can ruin them, but sometimes your neighbor might be on their side because they've clearly bought stocks in the same thing that you have. So you can kind of follow what people are into. If someone over the other side of the table has bought stocks in something that at the moment isn't doing very well, well, that probably means that they've got cards that are going to push it up this round. Are they going to tank the ones that you're invested in? Probably. It really manages to distill down that idea of a stock market of buy low, sell high, and trying to spot the trends, but in a way that doesn't ever feel boring or like this economic simulation. This is a fun game that just happens to, deliver its theme really well. And its pièce de résistance is this mechanism of giving to charity. So every round you have the opportunity to give one of your shares to charity. And at the end of the game, the player who gives the least to charity is out. They can't win, no matter how much money they have. That's why it's called the rich and the good. So you've got to decide how much to give away. It's all done face down on your board. If you give away too much, then you won't have enough money to win the game. But if you don't give away enough, well, then you also won't be winning the game either. So it's this really cool balancing thing. And I just love the tension that brings. And you see players that have spent far too much or just not enough, and it gives you that fun reveal at the end of the game. It's not my favorite stock market game, but it is one that stuck around for me, despite it being kind of a hard one to get to the table because it looks a bit boring. Once you get it there, it is a fun time. And number 94 is Champions of Midgard, which is a worker placement game that they've added dice to, which makes it more exciting. So like any worker placement game, you are putting your worker on a spot to collect some resources or take an action. And so you'll be collecting food and wood, but also these dice that represent your Viking warriors. And they are crucial because basically your town is being bombarded with monsters and it's your job to fight them off. And that's how you're going to get glory points. You've got Draugr and trolls and then these sea monsters that you have to sail to get to. And when you get there, you will be rolling your Vikings to try and get enough hits to defeat them. And if you do, you'll get some points or some gold. What you need to do successfully to win the game is just to defeat a lot of monsters. But you kind of got to build up your ability to do that. Especially with the monsters at sea, you're going to have to build a longship, but then to get out to them, you're going to need to collect up a bunch of dice and have enough food to feed those Vikings on their voyage. And then potentially you go through stormy weather, which might impact, kill off some of your Vikings on the way. And then when you get there, you're going to be rolling your dice to defeat them. And if you don't have enough strength to get them, then it's a wasted trip. So you can sort of jump in with a couple of dice, but if they get killed off really quickly, then that's useless. And you've effectively wasted quite a lot of effort. Whereas you can be more cautious. You can make sure that you pack that ship full of Viking dice and send them with loads of food. Maybe overdo it, but guarantee almost that you will get the rolls you need and you will defeat them. So there's a real nice push your luck thing to it, which means for some people, this game is going to be too lucky and you kind of put thought into that strategy and planning and then ultimately your dice don't deliver and, well, that sucks. And the expansion does kind of introduce these ways to mitigate that. And I'm very torn on how much I like the expansion because whilst I can totally see everyone's side of it being too punishing sometimes, this game, on the other hand, that is what's fun and exciting about it. And actually adding on, bolting all this stuff to the game just kind of makes it a bit more unwieldy. And I preferred the streamlined nature of the original. And for me, someone who doesn't like that head down, heavy worker placement experience of really trying to plan out the whole game and there being so many options to think through, I did love the simplicity of the original game, that there are a few spots to really fight over. It's really annoying when someone gets there in front of you. That, to me, is the joy of a worker placement game. As soon as you add more options and places to go, then there's less of that fight, there's less of that frustration. It's the same with the monsters. As soon as you add more monsters to fight, well then you're not really annoyed that someone got there before you. You're not cursing yourself that you didn't do that before doing that. Also really like the excitement of the dice. Of course, it could ruin your game, but just the fact that you took a gamble, you didn't take quite enough Vikings, and sometimes you pull it off and sometimes you don't. That for me is what Champions of Midgard is. And if you want to play a strategy game that has more mitigation or doesn't have that luck, well, there are hundreds of them out there. Champions of Midgard offers something different to those. So I have like a Kickstarter box that has both of the expansions in, and I've long been tempted to revert back to the smaller one because I actually think it's harder to get to the table now. The threat of laying it all out and setting it up and trying to introduce those extra ideas to people just is way more daunting. Not to mention the box is harder for me to get to game night, it's heavier, and it really just becomes a threat in my mind that means I'm not playing it as much as I perhaps used to. So really tempted to revert back to the original game, and maybe if I did, it might go up my top 100. Number 93 is Luxor, which is a game I think has been unfairly overlooked because of how it looks. But it's also one that's quite tricky to describe using mechanisms from other games because it's quite unlike other games, and that's what makes it so interesting. The theme is that you are going into an Egyptian temple and you're basically stealing artifacts. So you've got your group of adventurers, and so does everyone else, and you are coordinating your movements to try and collect artifacts to get points. But it also creates this interesting sort of tension and speed to the game because once two players get into the final burial chamber where the sarcophagi are, that ends the game. And so there's this threat looming of the game might end and you're not far enough in to get enough points from your final position, but you're also taking your time trying to collect artifacts because the way you collect them is this tricky coordination. So to move in the game, you play a movement card, and you've got a hand of 5 movement cards, but you can only ever play from the outer edges, so this card or this card. And when you take a new card, it goes into the middle. So your hand is sort of fixed, and you can see what's coming up. So even that has this little bit of strategy of like, oh, okay, I'm going to want to move a 3 soon, but I don't have a 3 in the positions I need, so okay, maybe I move another adventurer to be able to free up that card so that a 3 moves into the spot. And that is just a really cool thing as it is. I've never seen that in another game. And then you have to coordinate your adventurers in the same spot to be able to take certain artifacts. So this artifact's worth 6 points. You can only get it if you get 3 adventurers on that tile. And because your cards give you like fixed amounts of movement, it can be really tricky to do that. Also, you only have so many adventurers to start the game. You unlock more the further in that you get. And then you're trying to collect sets. There's like 3 different types of artifacts. So you need a set of 3 to sort of get more points. There's a whole bunch of different ways to get points. And when you take tiles, it actually speeds up the movement because now you're jumping over that space when you count out your movement. So the game does really kind of ratchet up. Again, kind of adding to that threat that it's going to finish before you've achieved what you want to. And as the game goes on, the board evolves. Certain tiles will change into other things, allowing you to get special cards that are much better for movement. Or there's certain chambers that will basically teleport you from one tile to another. So you're factoring that in when you're calculating your options of movement. It's one of these games where you really have to spot the opportunities, but you start to learn the language of the game. Oh, okay, so if I move 3, then I could jump there, and it's just really interesting the kind of thoughts that you have to go through. But it's not complicated or hard to wrap your head around. It's just very specific to this game. It looks older than it is. It's only from 2018, but it does have that feel of a classic German game with the shared board, that sort of indirect player interaction where you're getting in each other's way, you're taking the things you want, but it doesn't have that aggression, and just really light rules. You know, this is very much a family weight game that anyone can get into. But for me, there's still those interesting decisions that every turn you're really having to put thought into what you're doing and kind of planning ahead. And I really love that. I have got the expansion, but I sort of wish I didn't because I only like some of the modules and now it's just weighing the box down. And even the ones I like is just adding more to the setup. And when it comes to like a light family game like this, some of the brilliance of it is that it's easy to get into. So as soon as you start to complicate it, it's like, is it worth it? You're losing why you wanted the game in the first place. And number 92 is Funny Friends, which is a game about making friends and living life. Basically, it's the game of life, the adult version, because it's got a really dark sense of humor to it. So you each play as a character, and you have this board that represents different aspects of your life. So how much are you smoking and drinking and taking drugs? How much money do you have? How ill are you? How unhappy are you? But also it tracks who you're friends with, whether you're in a relationship or married. You can be friends with other players in the game, so you each have tokens for each other's players, and you will create friendships. You could even be married to another player in the game. You're trying to complete these life goals that are represented by cards. So for example, this one, you need to have many friends, and you win this by having 8 friends. And a round is where you're auctioning off cards that you will need like certain things to be able to do, but then you'll get stuffs for. So to be able to sell your body to science, you need to already be a smoker, but then you'll get some knowledge and some money. Whereas to go on a world trip, you're going to need some money and a friend, and then you'll get some knowledge. So there's loads of cards like that in the game, and a lot of them are a lot darker and more adult than that. But it's basically sort of a balancing thing of trying to get the resources you need to then pay for other things to meet the goals that you want. So under the surface, it's a strategy game, you know, like many others, but just with such a fun theme on top of it that just really brings alive what you're doing and tells a story every time you play it. And the way you get these cards is an auction. You have these tokens which represent the time in your life. So you have to sort of decide, how much time am I going to invest to this thing over someone else? How much do you want this card? How important it is to your goals? One of the goals you might have to complete is start a commune, which you need to be taking drugs and be unhappy and have 4 friends. But one of the benefits of completing that is that you get to have sex. So it's just this very silly theme that is really enjoyable to follow, and you're really much more interested in what the other players are doing because you get to see all of the lives that you're leading. But just the fact that a lot of the cards allow you to do things with each other, take a friend to this thing or have sex with another character, you can then offer up that to other players in the hope that they'll join you because it will probably benefit them too. So there are a lot of games like this about living the perfect life, but it's nice with this that the other players are part of your life as much as you are. And underneath it all, it is a solid game because it's co-designed by Freedom and Freezer, who designed Power Grid. So it's not like I've kept this game only for the theme. I've had other games with a theme like this that are long gone. Funny Friends, it has a solid framework and then just happens to be like the darkest humor game that I've ever played. So I'd love to see this one come back in print, ideally in a smaller version because it is just a card game. But I can also see why publishers aren't exactly jumping to print it. I haven't played this one in a while, but the memory does live strong in my mind. There's a chance if I played it tomorrow, it might slip off my top 100, but I do really love it for its creativity. And number 91 is Bonanza. It feels like a bit of a running theme of this part of the top 100, that we've got these unassuming, kind of ugly games, and Bonanza is so much better than it looks. It's a negotiation game where you play as bean farmers, trading beans with each other to plant into your fields and then harvest them at the right time to get money and win the game. The reason negotiation's so important in this game is you have a fixed hand of cards. You can't move your cards around in your hand, and you have to plant the leftmost card every turn. So if you've got your fields already full, and you've got a bean that doesn't match, you're going to have to uproot those beans before you want to be able to plant something else. You're forced to do it. So what you're trying to do is trade out those cards from your hand before they get there, or try and get more of what you need so you can harvest. So it's about spotting opportunities. Someone else is giving away a lot of beans that actually maybe you've got coming up in your hand. Maybe you just give up on what you've already got planted and go for that. The beans all score in different quantities. So the ones that are a lot rarer in the deck, they're worth a lot more for little of them. Whereas it's much easier to get the chili beans and the blue beans. There's loads of them. So it's really easy in negotiations to find them, but they don't get you as much gold. You really have to have a lot of them to get the payout that you want. So it's kind of got this economy thing as well. Do you continue to cling on to the soybeans while they're just keeping a field and you can't seem to find any, they're not coming out of the deck, no one's trading them with you? Or do you harvest the soybeans early because then it's freeing up a space for something else that actually will make you money? Another way the game encourages negotiation is by giving you 2 cards every round that you use for bartering. So you can trade them with other people that might want them, But if you can't get rid of them, then you've got to plant them into your field. So again, there's sort of a desperation to get rid of them. And the other thing I love about it is you're just trading one thing. You're trading beans for other beans. There's no other currency or cards or anything in the game to negotiate with. So it's a very pure form of trading. I love how big of an experience you can get in such a tiny box. Those are my top 100 board games, numbers 100 to 91. If you want to buy any of them, there are links below. And if you want to see the rest of the series, please subscribe to the channel. To get exclusive content, become a patron at patreon.com/Actualol. I'm John Perkis, thanks for watching.